A lot going on. Let me just go right into CSR Change Agent for Good. So, I think, the elephant in the room is climate change. And actually, right after this, I have to leave because we're dealing with that. I'm with Wyndham Worldwide, and we have properties in Puerto Rico, in Houston, in Florida, and St. Thomas, and we're dealing with the hurricanes, which is related to climate change. And my talk is about the trends, the stakeholders, and how companies are addressing what's happening. And right now, in terms of what's happening with the climate, it is real. It's not fake news. It is a reality of what a lot of businesses are dealing with. And we own hotels, we own timeshares, we have rental exchanges, and the Caribbean is just getting pounded with storm after storm, and it's about the people and their lives. And that is something that has been talked about by scientists for many, many years, but we are living the reality, the new reality of how do you adapt and become resilient in this. At the same time, what is happening is that we have a population explosion, over 7 billion, and we are using our resources that are not sustainable. And so as a company, we're looking at how do we effectively manage depleting resources, and which has a negative impact on the environment. And the third is technology. It's just amazing that we are totally connected all over the world, and this has driven transparency. So as a company, you have to sit here and say, okay, they can see what your business is doing, what you're manufacturing, how you treat your employees all over the world with one click of a camera and video and send it around. So those powerful trends that we're dealing with today, for me, this statement by Darwin is so appropriate. It's not the strongest of the species that survive, nor the most intelligent, but the one most adaptable to change. And that's what we're talking about. Change is accelerating. Change is how you have to manage, and that's why I say CSR is a change agent for good, because we are trying to manage the change in a positive way. And this, to me, is the new paradigm for business and working with nonprofits all over the world. So, you look at the stakeholders, and it has been a perfect storm, because we heard a lot today about millennials, but not only millennials, it's baby boomers. Employees care. And at the end of the day, having a corporate social responsibility program helps with recruitment, helps with retention, helps with productivity, and it's proven. The other thing is customers. We now work with our customers side by side, where for my company, we call it request for proposals to use our hotels. Well, many of them want to know, do we actually have environmental programs in our hotels in order to secure the contract? That is just one example, and it's worth over $100 million in revenues. And then you have governments. I track over 450 pieces of legislation globally, because we're in 100 countries, actually 120 countries. And what I see is that legislation around the environment. There's a carbon tax in the UK. There's a CSR tax in India. There's a, California has a transparency act around human rights. I see the acceleration of legislation around this. And we just recently, as you know, had over 190 countries sign up for the UN Global Compact in terms of reducing our environmental footprint. The United States decided not to participate, but if you're a global company, you have to comply with global legislation. Regardless if the United States decided not to participate, you still have to participate. So when I look at that, and then last, investors, where I see, and he was just talking about social responsible investments, SRI funds. We have investors who ask companies about our programs, and they call it environmental social governance, and they actually track and want to know, do you manage not only your profits, but are you also managing those non-financial indicators? And it is, those investors control over $21 trillion of investment, and it is growing. So in the boardrooms, in these companies, it is very important. All of these factors, in my mind, speaks to the reason why a company should and has to have a corporate social responsibility program that is integrated into your business practices. So as we've been moving forward over the years, I wanted to just give you, I know this is only 10 minutes, a couple of examples of what we've done in terms of driving change. And our program, I wanted to just speak, we go across 3 different groups. We have a hotel group, we have a timeshare group, we have a rental exchange, we have 45 brands, everything from Ramada, Wyndham, Days Inn, Super 8, to timeshare, RCI, used to be called Fairfield Resorts, to rental exchange, huge presence in Europe, Landel Green Parks, Host Season, RCI. But when we look at our program, it is a global program across all of those assets. And we work to actually focus on 3 key areas, because to simplify it, at the end of the day, it's all about the people and impacting over 1 million people. It's all about our planet, reducing our footprint to meet the science-based targets, which is 40% by 2025. And it's all about offering places to stay that are ethical and responsible, particularly today with regards to human rights and human trafficking that could potentially happen in our assets. And so the way that we've been implementing the program, and really it has been through innovation and leveraging technology. And you cannot, I think I heard somebody else say that Einstein said, you can't get the same results by doing the same old thing. You have to use technology, innovation. You can't solve for using less resources with the same resources. So as our company has gone on this journey for the last 11 years when we spun off from Cendant, we've actually worked with our vendors, partners, NGOs, and organizations, and even our peers, Marriott, Hilton, to develop solutions, because it is a global problem. This is just one example of supply chain innovation, where we actually work with the vendor Cintas. And Cintas actually provides the majority of the hotel uniforms in all of the hospitality companies around the world. I actually approached them almost 8 years ago and said, can we develop a green uniform? Has anybody heard of Patagonia? It's a sportswear company, and they actually, and my son, I don't know if you heard of the sport Ultimate Frisbee, is their team actually, their uniforms were from Patagonia, and Patagonia's uniforms are all made out of plastic. And they've been a very sustainable company for many, many years. So when I was working in my company, I said, why can't our uniforms be made out of plastic bottles? If they could figure it out, why can't I? So when I went to Cintas almost 8 years ago, they said, we can't do it. And they said, and it's gonna be too expensive. And I was like, okay, there is a sportswear company that's been doing this for years. Let's go talk to them. They're not competing with you. Let's figure out how they figured this out. So we worked with Patagonia to understand where they were getting the technology, how they use plastic bottles. We actually helped them to pilot and test the uniforms, because everybody said something made out of plastic is going to be really hot. And so we tested it in Puerto Rico, we tested it in California, we tested it in the Northeast, these uniforms at the front desk, and it took us 18 months, but we got there. First, they were more expensive. I'm going to be honest. But within 2 years, the cost had become neutral. to another uniform that was not made out of plastic bottles, and now it's used by the entire industry. So to me, you can develop solutions by partnering with vendors, and companies have that responsibility. Another example is around social innovation. So we actually, as you know, in hotels and timeshares, we offer coffee. And we said, okay, so what type of coffee are we offering? So what we found out was that we partnered with Arbor Day, and coffee is, the way it naturally grows is in the shade. But coffee today, they have planted down millions of trees to grow coffee in the sun. That's not how it's naturally done. So we partnered with them and said, you know what, we will purchase shade-grown coffee and offer it in our timeshares. Today, we buy 250,000 pounds of coffee and put it into our timeshares. This coffee, which is shade-grown, because we don't have to cut down the trees, we save over 25 million square feet of trees every year. In addition to that, we take a part of the proceeds, and for the farmers who actually, we help them, and we do an audit every year to make sure that this is happening. We make sure there are fair wages between men and women. Part of the proceeds goes toward medical and school benefits for the kids and the families. So there's a social impact and an environmental impact. And this program has grown over the years, and we've been doing this for 6 years. So that's a partner with an NGO. The third is around one of our businesses, Landel Green Parks in the Netherlands. And people say, you know, you keep hearing zero footprint. People are like, you can't do it. Well, we've been working with one sector of our business to prove that you can do it, because the issue we have with trying to reduce our environmental footprint, and you know they're saying 90% is not enough, we need to be at zero. So what we've been doing, Landel Green Park, the leadership of Thomas Hirkin in that part of the world, has demonstrated how you can get there. What they've done is they've installed energy efficiency practices, everything from LED lights to variable pumps to solar panels on their bungalows, et cetera, and so forth, on the buildings to reduce their footprint. So first they did what I call physical footprints. In addition to that, they have electric vehicles charging stations, but then they've also, to get that next step, have had to buy offsets, carbon offsets. But first, the foundation is in energy efficiency. The second step is by putting in renewable energy. The third step is going through carbon offsets. We're proud to say they're 80% there. But one of the things that, this misnomer that when you do a program like that, is going to negatively impact the guests who stay there. You're going to have cold rooms. You're going to offer food that's terrible. The service is going to be, horrendous. And so the project called Expedition Zero is zero impact and improved guest satisfaction. So they are 80% there on the reduction. I believe they'll be there in another 2 years in terms of 100%. Their guest satisfaction scores have gone up 2 points. So that's an example of how we can get to zero, and we're using them as our pilot and model for our portfolio, because you need to have those examples when you're such a large global portfolio as we are, to demonstrate to the other businesses and parts of the portfolio how you can do it. And last, in terms of business innovation, I'm a firm believer in technology, and we need to leverage software. And we have leveraged software across our global portfolio, because one of the biggest things that our challenges was, well, how do you reduce your footprint in 100 countries with all of these metrics, the different building types, the different languages? And so we developed a software solution in partnership with Schneider Electric that we rolled out. And we got the baseline first in 2010, and today we're 33% down in our carbon emissions across the global portfolio. but we had to leverage technology. And I'm a firm believer that as we go on this path and countries talk about reducing, we have to have a system, some type of software solution globally, so that we know that we are actually reducing and making an impact. So I just want to wrap this up that saying corporate social responsibility can be the change agent for good. In fact, it has to be the change agent for good. It is the only path forward given what's happening today. And I'm proud that all of us in here, that's what our discussion is. My biggest challenge is the people who are not in this room. How do we convince everyone to be a part of the solution and move it forward? Thank you.